Jace Kessler wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, smearing grease across his brow. The summer heat turned the old garage into an oven, the scent of rust and machine oil thick in the air. Rows of antique engines, half-assembled hover cars, and dusty tools lined the walls. His grandfather's legacy, a forgotten kingdom of metal and invention. Kessler's auto shop had once been the pride of Clearwater, but after his grandfather passed, the place had fallen into disrepair. Now, Jace was the only one left keeping the lights on. He leaned over the rusted frame of an old grav bike, its anti-gravity plates cracked and useless. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered, adjusting a wrench. The power coupling sparked. "There, that should." A sudden hiss echoed from behind a pile of old crates, a noise Jace had never heard before. He frowned, dropping the wrench. This garage had been his second home since childhood. There shouldn't be any surprises left. Brushing his dark hair out of his eyes, he stepped around the workbench, cautiously moving toward the sound. The crates were stacked haphazardly, most covered in dust. He hesitated before gripping the edge of the top crate and pushing it aside. Beneath it, buried under decades of forgotten junk, was something unexpected, an old control panel embedded into the garage floor. What the hell? Jace knelt and ran his fingers over the surface. The metal was cool despite the heat, the buttons arranged in a way that felt oddly alien. Symbols he didn't recognize glowed faintly under the dust. His grandfather had never mentioned anything like this. Jace frowned, brushing away more grime until he found what looked like an activation switch. A long moment passed as he debated. He should probably leave it alone. But then again, curiosity had always been his curse. "All right, old man," he murmured. "Let's see what you were hiding." He pressed the button. The ground beneath him rumbled. A deep mechanical groan vibrated through the garage as hidden gears and hydraulics creaked to life. Jay stumbled back, heart pounding. The floor panels in front of him split apart with a deafening hiss, revealing a hidden elevator platform descending into darkness. Jay stared, mouth dry. "Grandpa, what the hell did you build down there?" A gust of cool, sterile air rushed from the opening. Lights flickered to life along the elevator shaft, stretching down into the unknown. Jace's pulse hammered in his ears. This wasn't just some old forgotten project. This was something big. He glanced at the grav bike, then back at the yawning chasm before him. The shop, the bills, the never-ending struggle of keeping a dying garage alive. None of that mattered now. He had to see what was below. Taking a deep breath, he stepped onto the platform. The elevator descended with a shudder, the hum of unseen machinery filling the shaft. The walls were lined with strange conduits, some pulsing faintly with blue energy. Jace clenched his fists. He had always thought his grandfather was just a stubborn old mechanic, but this was something else entirely. Minutes passed before the platform finally ground to a halt. A pair of heavy blast doors loomed before him, their surface marked with more alien symbols. Jace stepped forward, hesitantly running his hand along the metal. As if sensing his presence, the doors let out a deep, resonating chime before hissing open. Beyond them stretched a cavernous chamber, an underground hangar filled with machines unlike anything Jace had ever seen. Rows of sleek, armored constructs lined the walls, standing in perfect formation. They were humanoid in shape, towering nearly 3 meters tall, their metallic plating gleaming under the soft glow of overhead lights. Jace took a shaky breath. What the hell is this place? He stepped forward, his boots echoing against the cold metal floor. Control panels lined the walls, blinking with unreadable text. Consoles hummed softly, still operational despite what must have been decades of abandonment. His grandfather had hidden all of this beneath their shop. Why? And more importantly, what was it all for? A console near the center of the room caught his eye. It looked different from the others, its screen displaying a looping sequence of alien script. Jace hesitated before reaching out, fingers hovering over the interface. The symbols shifted, rearranging themselves into something he could almost understand. A single word stood out. Activate. His breath caught in his throat. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to turn back. But something deeper, some burning need to uncover the truth, pushed him forward. Jace exhaled slowly and pressed the command. The hangar came alive. A deafening roar filled the chamber as power surged through dormant systems. The armored constructs twitched, their eyes flashing with a piercing red glow. The ground trembled as ancient engines roared to life. Jace barely had time to stumble back before a voice, cold, mechanical, and filled with authority, echoed through the space. Galactic War Protocol initiated, awaiting high command orders. Jace's stomach dropped. Oh shit. The elevator door yawned open with an eerie groan, releasing a gust of stale air that smelled of old metal and something else, something ancient. Ethan took a cautious step forward, his breath shallow, his heart hammering against his ribs. The chamber before him was unlike anything he had ever seen. Beneath the garage, far deeper than he thought possible, sprawled an underground facility. Metallic walls gleamed under dim, pulsating blue lights, stretching into a vast corridor lined with consoles, screens, and machinery long forgotten. The hum of power coursing through unseen conduits resonated beneath his feet, tingling up his spine. His flashlight beam wavered as he tried to process what he was seeing. This isn't just a basement, he whispered. A terminal flickered to life at the far end of the chamber. Ethan approached, drawn to the soft hum of an active system. Dust covered the screen, but as he wiped it away, glowing alien script scrolled across the surface, shifting and rearranging until language recognized, human, standard English. A new screen appeared, displaying rows of unfamiliar symbols beside translated words. System status, dormant. Emergency activation protocol, standby. Fleet coordination, awaiting command. Security override, user identified, level 1 clearance. Ethan's mouth went dry. Fleet coordination? His fingers hovered over the console. He didn't understand half of what was displayed, but one thing was clear. His grandfather had been hiding something monumental beneath the garage. The old man had always been eccentric, but this was beyond anything Ethan could have imagined. A distant clank echoed through the chamber, making him jump. He swung his flashlight toward the source of the noise. A door. It had slid open on its own. Beyond it, darkness stretched endlessly. Ethan hesitated, but curiosity, no, compulsion, drove him forward. He stepped through. Inside was a control center of sorts. Towering screens displayed maps of star systems, ship formations, and tactical readouts in a language he couldn't read. Holographic projections flickered in the dimness, cycling through battle formations and fleet maneuvers. A single chair sat in the middle of the room, surrounded by a crescent of interfaces. And then he saw it, a symbol etched into the metal of the chair's backrest. It was the same symbol on his grandfather's old dog tags. His breath hitched. This was Ethan realized aloud. His grandfather, Grayson Holt, had been part of something much, much bigger than just an old mechanic running a junkyard. As Ethan approached, a voice, smooth yet synthetic, suddenly filled the chamber. User detected. Awaiting command. Ethan froze. The voice had no clear source. It resonated from the very walls. The screens brightened. Symbols flickered rapidly. Data scrolled at an overwhelming speed. Then, one phrase translated before his eyes. Reactivate command uplink? Y/N. Ethan swallowed hard. His mind screamed to know, but his hands shook with indecision. What the hell did you leave me, Grandpa? He muttered. He reached out, just as his finger brushed the interface. A klaxon blared. A deep red glow washed over the chamber. More alien words scrolled across the screens, translating into a message that chilled him to the bone. Connection reestablished. Galactic Defense Initiative activated. Warning, war protocols engaged. Alliance forces notified. Enemy factions alerted. Ethan stumbled back. What the hell did I just do? The screen shifted, showing real-time footage. Across the galaxy, ships, massive fleets were waking up. Hibernating war machines stirred from dormancy. Planets scrambled their defenses. Red alerts flared on world after world. And at the center of it all, one location pulsed on the star map. Earth. Ethan had just accidentally issued a galactic war declaration. The klaxons wailed louder. A new message appeared. First strike forces inbound. His blood ran cold. Something was coming. And fast. Ethan's breath came in short, sharp gasps. The words on the screen burned into his mind. First strike forces inbound. Panic seized him. He scrambled at the console, fingers flying over buttons and touchpads. He had to stop it. There had to be a way to shut it down, to undo whatever command he had just issued. Override. Cancel command, he shouted. The system responded instantly. Authorization required. Level 5 clearance. Ethan clenched his fists. Level 5. He barely had level 1 clearance. His grandfather must have had a higher level, but Grayson Holt had been dead for 5 years. The realization settled like a weight in his gut. He had no way to stop this. The screens flickered, shifting from star charts to live battle feeds. Ethan's stomach twisted as he watched alien ships, sleek, ominous vessels bristling with weapons, mobilizing. Some bore the markings of factions he didn't recognize, but others carried the insignia of the Solar Defense Initiative, Earth's official military force. And they were preparing for war. A sudden vibration beneath his feet made his head snap up. The entire facility lurched as machinery that had been dormant for centuries whirred to life. Then, a new message flashed across the main console. Command beacon active. Awaiting Supreme Commander. Ethan barely had time to register that when a new sound filled the chamber. One that made his skin crawl. The grinding of heavy metal footsteps. Something was waking up. Ethan whirled around. From a far side of the chamber, doors slid open with a hiss. Beyond them, massive shapes stirred in the darkness, hulking figures that weren't human. A single red light flared to life. Then another. Then a dozen more. Machines. Battle mechs. War droids. Ancient constructs built for a war that never happened. One of them stepped forward, its massive frame humming with power as servos engaged. 7 feet tall, humanoid in shape, but unmistakably alien in design. Armor plating lined its body, worn and battle-scarred despite its slumber. It lifted its head and spoke. Supreme Commander identified. Ethan blinked. What? The mech stepped forward, towering over him. You have initiated the command protocols. You are the highest-ranking active personnel in this facility. Ethan shook his head violently. No, there's a mistake. I'm not a commander. The mech tilted its head, as if processing his words. Rank discrepancies detected. No higher authority detected. Defaulting to protocol. A pause. Then, awaiting your orders, Supreme Commander. Ethan's brain short-circuited. This had to be a nightmare. But the nightmare wasn't over. Because at that exact moment, the entire facility shook. A distant explosion thundered through the underground structure. The war had arrived. Dust rained from the ceiling as Ethan stumbled against the console. The screens now showed incoming craft, ships plunging toward Earth's atmosphere. He could see the insignia of at least 3 different factions, all converging on one target. This facility. Because of him, incoming hostile forces, the mech intoned, unbothered by the quake. Defensive protocols engaging. A deep rumble resonated through the underground base as something massive shifted above them. Ethan glanced at the monitors, horrified to see that old planetary defenses were coming online. Autocannons, energy barriers, launch silos activating after centuries of silence. But it wouldn't be enough. Earth government didn't know this war was coming. Humanity wasn't ready. And the aliens descending from the sky weren't here to negotiate. Ethan turned back to the mech. We need to warn Earth. Now. The machine regarded him for a long moment before speaking. Human communications compromised. Command systems linked to war protocols. Only authorized galactic defense transmissions permitted. Ethan's fists clenched. No way to send a warning. No way to stop the invasion. Unless. His eyes snapped back to the command chair, the one his grandfather had once used. If the system recognized him as commander, then maybe he could do what his grandfather once did. Take control of the entire war machine. Before he could second-guess himself, Ethan sprinted for the chair and threw himself into it. The console reacted instantly. Screens flashed red, data feed spiked, and the words that appeared made his blood turn to ice. Supreme Commander authentication confirmed. Fleet control transferred. Awaiting first order. Ethan stared at the screens. His hands trembled over the controls. This was it. Either he took command, or Earth fell before it even had a chance to fight. Outside, the first alien ships broke through the atmosphere. The war had begun. Ethan had never commanded anything in his life, let alone an ancient war fleet hardwired into a forgotten military installation. And yet, here he was. The command interface pulsed, awaiting his first order. His fleet, stood by, linked to his words, his actions, his decisions. He didn't have time to process the insanity of it, because the first alien ships had landed. The screens flickered to real-time battlefield footage. Alien dropships piercing Earth's atmosphere, touching down in remote areas outside cities. The world had no idea. Earth's military wasn't prepared. And if Ethan didn't act now, humanity wouldn't get the chance to fight back. The battle mech beside him turned, its glowing optics focused on him. Awaiting tactical directive, Supreme Commander. Ethan's hands hovered over the controls. He didn't know what the hell he was doing, but his grandfather had. And right now, that was the only thing keeping him from breaking apart. Think, Ethan. What would Grayson do? He forced himself to breathe, to focus. What was the first priority in any battle? Control the battlefield. He slammed his hand on the console, activating the planetary defense grid. Deploy all remaining anti-air batteries. I want those ships out of the sky now. The machine confirmed. Defensive systems online. Engaging. Above them, Earth's forgotten defenses awoke. Old missile silos burst open, unleashing a hailstorm of projectiles into the sky. Energy turrets locked onto incoming craft, their ancient targeting systems activating after centuries of slumber. The alien fleet didn't see it coming. On the screens, Ethan watched as one of the lead warships took a direct hit, its engines shredded in a cascade of blue fire. The explosion tore through the clouds, sending debris tumbling toward the ground. One down, more to go. Another impact, then another. Ethan saw the moment the invaders realized Earth wasn't defenseless. But that didn't mean they would retreat, because now they knew someone had activated the old war machine, and they were coming straight for him. The entire facility shook violently as something massive impacted the surface above. Ethan barely had time to brace himself before the mech spoke. Enemy ground forces detected. Perimeter breach imminent. Ethan's stomach twisted. They weren't just sending ships. They were sending troops. The underground war room was suddenly bathed in red light. Ethan turned back to the screens and saw them. Alien warriors marching toward the garage entrance. Some wielded energy-based weapons. Others carried plasma blades that burned through steel like paper. They knew he was here, and they weren't going to stop until they killed him. Supreme Commander, the mech said. Defense units awaiting deployment. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. His options were shrinking fast. If they broke through the facility's doors, it was over. But this place wasn't just an old garage. It was a bunker built for war. Ethan turned to the console, his hands flying across the controls. Deploy ground units. Hold the entrance at all costs. The response was immediate. From deep within the facility, armored plating slid open. Rows of combat drones activated, their optics glowing as they powered up. Some were humanoid, like the mech beside him. Others were tank-like machines built for heavy assault. And all of them were Ethan's to command. Defensive units engaged. The monitors shifted, showing the battle just outside the facility. Ethan watched as the first wave of alien warriors charged, energy weapons blazing, only to be met with a barrage of gunfire and plasma rounds. The fight had begun. Outside, the battlefield turned into a maelstrom of chaos. Drones stormed forward, unleashing firepower at the advancing aliens. Some of the enemy warriors dodged with inhuman speed, cutting through metal with blazing plasma blades. Others fell instantly, their bodies torn apart by the sheer force of the automated defenses. But the aliens weren't just soldiers. They had war beasts. Massive, four-legged creatures bounded across the battlefield, their bodies covered in armored plating. Their eyes glowed with eerie intelligence, and when one of the drones turned to fire, the beast moved faster than any machine, tearing through the metal with a single strike of its claws. Ethan's breath caught. They weren't winning. They were holding the line, but the aliens were pushing through, their forces relentless. And then, the ground exploded. Ethan shielded his face as shockwaves rattled the entire facility. On the monitors, he saw it. A massive warship had landed directly outside. The screen zoomed in, and for the first time, Ethan saw who was leading them. A towering figure emerged from the ship. Its armor was obsidian black, its helmet smooth and featureless, except for two piercing red slits where its eyes should be. When it spoke, its voice rattled the very walls of the bunker. Who dares awaken the weapons of the old war? The air in Ethan's lungs turned to ice. This wasn't just an enemy commander. This was a conqueror, the one who'd been waiting for Earth to be weak. And now, it had come to crush humanity before it could rise again. Ethan knew, with bone-deep certainty, that this was the moment, the turning point. Either he won this fight, or Earth fell. The mech beside him turned its glowing gaze toward him. Orders, Supreme Commander. Ethan swallowed. He had no experience, no training, no idea what the hell he was doing. But there was no one else, and that meant there was only one answer. He gritted his teeth, planted his hands on the console, and issued his command. We take the fight to them. Outside, the war machine roared to life. The last battle for Earth had begun. The facility trembled as explosions rippled through the battlefield above. Ethan gripped the console, his mind racing. The alien commander had arrived. The war had escalated, and now he had to win it. The mech beside him turned, its optics glowing with unreadable calculation. Enemy forces advancing, defensive lines failing, awaiting new directive. Ethan's jaw clenched. He couldn't just react. He had to outthink them. His gaze swept across the monitors. The combat drones were holding the enemy back, but barely. The aliens were using shock tactics, brute force, and their war beasts to smash through. The defenses would break soon. But then Ethan noticed something. The war beasts were devastating his troops, but they weren't wearing helmets. They had no protection on their heads. A plan snapped into place. He slammed his hand on the console. Target the beasts' heads. All units, aim for their skulls. Now, the command spread through the network in an instant. The battlefield shifted. Drones stopped wasting fire on the creatures' armored bodies. Instead, plasma rounds and heavy slugs were fired with surgical precision, straight into the creatures' exposed heads. The first war beast jerked mid-charge, a railgun round blowing through its skull. It collapsed, sliding forward in a dead heap. The others followed. One by one, the war beasts fell, their bodies twitching before going still. Ethan exhaled sharply. First advantage secured, but the enemy wasn't finished. The towering alien commander, the conqueror, watched from the battlefield's edge, his red visor burning like twin suns. Then, he raised a hand. A high-pitched frequency rippled through the air. Ethan's screen glitched for a second, static crackling over the battlefield feed. Then, the drones stopped moving. Ethan's breath caught. What the hell just happened? The mech beside him twitched, its head jerking slightly. Its optics flickered before snapping back to red. Warning, systems compromised. Ethan's stomach dropped. The Conqueror had jammed the entire war network. His army was frozen. The enemy warriors surged forward, unopposed, cutting through the battlefield like a storm. Ethan's hands flew across the controls, trying to force a manual override. Nothing worked. The system was locked. His forces were dead in the water, and the enemy was seconds away from breaching the command center. The Conqueror stepped forward, his voice booming. The old weapons do not belong to you, human. You were a child playing in your ancestors' grave. Ethan's heart pounded. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a leader. But this wasn't just his fight anymore. This was about all of humanity. And he refused to lose. He turned to the mech beside him, his voice steady. Emergency reboot. Override all external connections. Shut everything down except this room. The mech hesitated. Then its optics flickered. Acknowledged. The entire facility shuddered. Every drone, every turret, every system shut down. The battlefield went dark. For a split second, silence fell. Then, Ethan hit the manual restart. Every drone, every turret, every system rebooted, but this time without the external link the Conqueror had hijacked. The moment the drones reactivated, Ethan issued one single command. Attack the Conqueror. Full force. No mercy. The battlefield erupted. Drones that had been frozen in place now turned their weapons on the alien leader. Plasma fire, railgun rounds, rockets, all of it was directed at the towering figure in black armor. The Conqueror barely had time to react. A direct railgun shot slammed into his chest, sending him skidding backward. Another explosion engulfed him, fire licking at his armor. For the first time, Ethan saw it, hesitation. The Conqueror wasn't invincible. He could be hurt, and that meant he could be killed. Ethan's voice was ice cold. Finish him. The drones closed in. The Conqueror roared, energy flaring around him. He raised a blade, cutting through the nearest machine, but it wasn't enough. The onslaught didn't stop. The war machines that had once been forgotten by history now rained hell upon him. Another railgun shot. Another detonation. The Conqueror's armor cracked. And then, the final missile struck. For a single, endless moment, time seemed to stop. Then the Conqueror's body collapsed. His massive form hit the ground, motionless. His glowing visor dimmed. The battlefield fell silent. The war had been decided. The Conqueror was dead. Ethan let out a shaky breath. The monitors showed one last thing. The remaining alien ships in orbit, turning away. Retreating. They had lost their leader. Their strongest warrior. And they knew they couldn't win. The invasion was over. Ethan's hands trembled. His entire body felt like it had been through hell. But he had done it. He had commanded the last war fleet of Earth. And he had won. The mech beside him straightened, its optics locking onto him. Victory achieved, Supreme Commander. Awaiting final orders. Ethan exhaled. Then, with a small, tired grin, he whispered, "Let's go home."